we're going to get right into the core of what ASMR is. This is a deep spiritual philosophy that nobody has figured out but me. And I'm going to tell it to you a little bit here as ASMR. So to go along on this ride, you're going to actually have to sort of surrender into the nature of what the phenomenon is, which is a highly sensitive, very subtle way of communicating through reality. It's more than words. In fact, ASMR, which we're going to get into, has nothing to do with the words. It has to do with the sensation of what it is to be a human being and the way our senses collide and send different energy waves through our body. I've come to the clear realization that ASMR, or what we call ASMR, autosensorial meridian response, which is just a sort of sloppy name that's been tagged on by modernist science, but it's also interesting because the internet culture actually manifests this entire collective discussion of what is actually an eternal phenomenon that's been going on since the dawn of time, because it has to do with the Kundalini energy, which is the spiritual life force that animates the human being and is found as the fuel to the entire biological, psychological, physiological, spiritual system in the science of yoga. So there's a sort of deep fundamental layer to how I believe this canon should be rendered and will be understood in the future. But to explore that is not a intellectual journey. It's a journey of whiskers tapping on microphones and spittle in the lips. Things that are strange and really kind of way out there. Sort of, it's peace. And that's one of the points I want to make here, is that ASMR is ultimately about peace. That's why Bob Ross is so beloved, and there's this lilting, simple, sensitive quality to the most graceful aspects of ASMR, where it's just, there are no worries, you're just floating upon a breeze, like, you know that frequency, and that's part of what this is. An ASMR trigger, no matter what it is, has a sensitivity to reality. It's not crass. And it's hard to get at what that actually means, because sensitivity is not just about a clear microphone. It's about an open heart. And it's about a conviction. Even a big burly man's hands carving a tiny little wooden sculpture. That sort of paradoxical thing, that's a trigger for me, which is the sensitivity of making something really tiny, but it being somebody that you wouldn't expect, you know. We all have our own intricacies, the impossible, the ineffable aspects of what makes us triggered by ASMR, that it's impossible to really describe this phenomenon in any practical way. But when you know, you know. It's like that hashtag, if you know, you know. And we all have our inroads to what ASMR is. In fact, it's been part of my life since I was a young boy. And I was calling it many different names, calling it, quote, ASMR. Why, again, it's a silly acronym that I don't have a better name yet, but we gotta find one. Calling it ASMR feels just, it's not the right spaciousness. But whatever this phenomenon is, it's something that has been part of me and with me my whole life, and I've understood the world in certain degrees through it. It's not foundational, but the foundational aspects of my life, spirituality, God, and the nature of being, they find themselves rendered in all places. Of course they do. And thus they find themselves rendered here, in this quote-unquote autosensory meridian response, which simply means that the human body is having feelings through its meridians that are sensorial, and they seem to be automatic. I'm just using the terms. And sure, maybe that points at something, but it doesn't actually activate the core of what this phenomenon is. To whomever it hits, when you feel it, and you go, okay. And in that, there's a sort of collective understanding of a unified love. And perhaps that's just too lyrical, too poetic, and as I've explained in other videos, there's actually energetic aspects of this too, in which the feeling of energy moving through my body at times feels very similar to the feeling of ASMR is, and are the tingles actually the body's early reception system to higher spiritual energies? Was the tenderness, the sensitivity, the aspects of paradox, and all of these impossibly strange micro-connections to reality, to the intimacy of a single moment, where you're just totally at one with somebody else's many little tongue twists. It's a totally abstract experiential phenomenon, and yet it's being shared by all these people, and we're all connecting about it over the internet. But it's connection over sensorial, phenomenological experience that we're all having energetically. It's a yoga. It's part of the game. And you see, I'm still exploring this space. It's totally experimental and at the bounds of reality, but it's truer because it's post-rational. ASMR is post-rational. This isn't supposed to make 100% sense as to why you're listening to this, and perhaps even watching it. Because while I talk about the audio aspect of ASMR, there's also the visual aspect of ASMR. As I mentioned earlier, a man just carving a little wood statue, or somebody doing something, just pouring a teacup, and all of the little things that people are just moving around in the world. We hear it, but then also we see it. And there's something about that simple, sweet way of moving through the world like a hummingbird that feels, it's ASMR, it's in the sound, but it's also in the visuals, in the movement, and the action. And it's ultimately an integrated experience. It's a whole body experience, especially when ASMR is initiated and manifests in the real world. You understand, there's a whole being there. It's so much more powerful than the digital, externalized way in which we do find it here on our devices and through the television. And how I discovered this weird part of myself growing up is watching QVC through the broadcast, or watching somebody sell coins on TV. There's an infinite amount of little things going on. YouTube and Reddit and broadcast television. There's so much to be mined in the murky ways of ASMR. Everything is potential. Every moment is potential. Every moment is potential for the tingles. And when the tingles occur, it feels like there's nothing else in the universe but it. How deep are you gonna go? That's the question of ASMR. How close are you gonna get to the source? ASMR is about access to the source. When you catch a glint of it from somebody's voice or their hand movement, you feel like you see the purity of that being, and you feel that purity inside yourself. sometimes I'll have ASMR on, and it will be mainly silence. And then somebody will speak, and it's sort of a lily pad in which I'm existing in my own neutrality, and then there's... I listen to a lot of meditation teachers too, because there is something meditative about the whole thing, about the doing of it. Here to you, and you listening to it. It's not, again, about the brain. It's about the feeling that you have in your body when you hear whatever's going on. And most people are going to be like, what the fuck? It's not going to make any sense. And we all are hyper individuated in our quote-unquote triggers. And so, even this, it's a random dice throw. And who knows if it lands anywhere, but it doesn't mean anything other than the phenomenological experience that it's occurring. It's totally present and beyond any way of placing into a temporal container. Now, yet it's existed my whole life, so there's atemporality, an eternity in which the tingles have always existed. We're just always waiting for the next one. Okay, let me know if anybody's watching this or listening to this. And if you are, thank you for coming along into my weird little world. It's the most niche thing I know.